Hello, I'm Bud McCord. I'm here in Brazil, South America. Welcome to Food for Thought, Abiding in Jesus. We're continuing our tour of God's vineyard, the ecosystem of spirituality. We're looking at the different parts of the experience that we live as believers here in the world as it is, not as we wish the world would be. I hope you're well. I hope you had a great weekend. This was a very, very busy weekend here in Brazil. Pam and I are leading a campus of the Memorial Baptist Church, which is located near São Paulo. And they've opened a new campus here, a new congregation in the city of São José dos Campos. And Pam and I are leading this group together under the leadership of Pastor Sidney Costa. And it's really going well. I spoke 3 different times yesterday, 3 different services. Brazil is a wonderful place to talk to people about Jesus. Brazilians are very, very open to a dialogue about spiritual things and especially about Jesus Christ. So that makes this a wonderful place to be able to live and minister. Certainly we have our problems here in our part of the world, as everybody has wherever you are right now. So good morning. And we're going to talk this week about a subject that Christians just have to face every single day, the world. The world. And the title of this particular part of our tour of the vineyard is to take a moment, stop in the vineyard and consider how beautiful and peaceful a vineyard is, and how the ecosystem of a vineyard produces a kind of calm and a sense of place and time and abundance. But it also takes place in a very, very real world, the world in which we live. It's not the world that we might want, but it is the world where we find ourselves. And in this world, there's a very strange kind of perfection. Now, I know that you almost never hear anybody say that the world is a perfect place, because there's just too much going on in the world that tells us that it is not a perfect place. But there is a perfection in this world that I believe we can meditate on and understand. The world is a perfect place to discover that we, humanity, we are not God. We are not God. Or in a more personal sense, I am not God. It doesn't take you too long living in this world to know that you are not in charge. You also can learn in this world that it's not primarily about you. It seems that the world is a place where we have to rid ourselves of this idea that we run everything, that we are in control. Now, that discovery leads us to a very pessimistic view if we're not careful. That could lead us to the place where Ecclesiastes says, eat and drink and be merry, for tomorrow you die. It can lead us to a place where we are living an out-of-control existence, where we, by our behavior, are taking minutes and hours and days and maybe even years away from our opportunity to be the human beings we should be in the world. When I was very young and beginning in the ministry, I read a book by an author named Scott Peck, and it's called The Road Less Traveled. And Scott Peck lived in the last century, and he was one of the foremost authorities in the area of psychology. I believe he was a psychiatrist, certainly a counselor and a therapist. And I was reading his book, and I remember coming across this statement. I'm not sure that most psychologists or psychiatrists today in the world and the way it is would agree with his statement, but he said, all mental health has at its root, all mental health problems have at their root a stubborn insistence to not accept the fact that there is pain in the world. I didn't quote that exactly right, but it stayed in my mind in this way. He said that in his work, working with people who are very, very mentally disturbed, very, very out of sync with any kind of reality. He said that underneath all of their mental problems, they could not accept the fact that life is difficult. That life is difficult. They could not reconcile in their inner thinking process, in their vision of the world and their paradigms of the world. They could not understand why life had to be difficult. Now, those of us who believe in the scriptures, and we believe that the words in the scriptures are inspired by God, and when we use the Bible to frame up our understanding of the world, it doesn't take us long in the Old Testament to watch the world of the paradise in which God placed Adam and Eve in the beginning devolve into or become a place where God tells Adam and Eve from the very beginning, everything is changing. Because you have eaten of the knowledge of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you will now face the world every single day, not as a place that is being generous with you, but a place where you will have to sweat and work, and you will discover in this environment, and I believe this may be the very essence of why God took Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden, is to create or allow an environment to exist where we discover that we are not God. We are not in charge. We have to be in this world, but we have to come to the place where we understand in Christ that we are not of this world. We're going to talk about this week. We could talk about this for a long, long time, but I would like to encourage you to understand that there is a sense in which every single human being has to grapple with this question of, if God is so good, why does he let a place like this world continue to exist? It's a fair question. It's a fair question. And so we have to deal with this question. And so if we hope to have a way of navigating through this world, there's a sense in which we have to accept the fact that the world is teaching us something and God is permitting it. Jesus said it like this. It's always so good to listen to Jesus. If I could encourage you to do one thing for your own personal mental health, I would say, listen to Jesus. Every time he speaks, his words have power to bring peace to your inner life. They are the final commentary on human existence and on divine love. And he is the revelation of the Father. He is the Word that became flesh. So when he speaks, let him talk. Listen and let him talk. He says this, these things I have spoken to you. He's talking about the things that he said to his disciples. In the world as it is, these things that I have spoken to you, that in me, you may have peace. In the world, you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. Now, for those people who like to suggest that Jesus never claimed to be God, you're just not listening. Everything that he said can only be said if he is one with the Father and he is God made visible and available among us. Everything he did allows us to see the true nature of God. The normal Christian life or the normal Christian experience is problems with purpose. The normal Christian experience is problems, but problems with purpose. In Romans it said, all things work together for the good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. So as we live our Christian life, as we live our experience here in this world, this brief span of time that we have in this world, We know we will have problems. Now, some people cannot accept the fact that the world is the way it is, and they cannot accept the fact that they have problems, and they doggedly refuse to accept that life here in this world is difficult. They cannot get over the difficulty of the world. But in Christ, he says, in the world you will have tribulations, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. Now we have to come to grips with those words. Do we really believe, when we look at Jesus and we watch what he said and what he did while he was in this world, do we really believe that he is the Word that was made flesh? He understands and lived the experience that we are living. He was not a superhero that did not feel the pain that we feel. There's so many films today by the comic book companies and everything that develop this metaphor of the hero that doesn't feel the same pain that we all feel. And therefore they can overcome the world with their godlike abilities. And we kind of find a refuge in these stories of Superman and Batman and all these other figures. But when we look at Jesus, he is so different. He didn't come to be heroic. He came to redeem us and love us back to the humanity that we lost when we thought we could be equal with God. Pastor Rick Warren, that I admire greatly, wrote in his book, The PurposeDriven Life, so beautifully, the very opening line of the book, I believe very first chapter 1 says, it's not about you. It's not about you. If you think the universe is about you, then you'll build your little castle in the clouds and become mentally ill. It's not about you. We can't start with it being about us. We have to start about what is the source, what allowed what we live to even exist. And we have, as believers in Christ, a revelation of God in flesh and blood, but not the hero that uses his strange powers to put evil in its place. No, he manifests the one power that can deal with the reality in which we live. Tribulations on the outside with peace and joy on the inside is the normal Christian experience. Let me read that again. The tribulations on the outside with peace and joy on the inside is the normal Christian experience. We live in a world that is under the control of the evil one, 1 John 5:19. But Christ lives in us. So we say, for to me to live is Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. Now, the proof that what Jesus says is in the living. It is in the reality of being able to, in our inner realm, in our inner life, in our mind, emotions, and will, and at the level of our spirit, it is this ability to have experienced this kind of joy that Jesus is describing without altering the world. And this is the thought for today that I hope you'll meditate on. When you walk into a vineyard, and this is what this course is built on, we're walking in a vineyard, and you're paying attention to the vine dresser, the vine, the branches, the fruit, and you're paying attention to all of this ecosystem, and then you stop in the middle of the vineyard and you go, oh, I wish the world could be like this. The world around the vineyard is a kind of reality that is frightening and depressing, C.S. Lewis said there's nothing you can say about our living in the world, about life, human life, that is good enough or bad enough to describe it. And so there's this conflict. But the vineyard is this place of inner peace in which we receive, we rejoice, and then we go into the world and we release this satisfaction as fruit. We'll be talking about this. And last little thought, it says, all grapes grow under and surrounded by true pressure. There's no vineyard in the world that can escape the normal pressures of the reality that surrounds the vineyard. The same thing is true of you and me. We live under pressure. We live in the midst of tribulation. But our tribulation can be transformed into purpose. And that purpose is to bear the fruit that allows people in the world to get a taste of the fact that there is a God, and this God is the love, origin of love, and we have the purpose of being in the world to put into this world by His grace and by our connection in Jesus, this so needed, generous thing called fruit, the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness. We are in the world. We are under pressure, but we are winning the victory over the world by the one thing that can win victory over the world, and that is to be loved. And from that love coming from Christ, we then can love others that are around us. We need to think on these things deeply and understand that we are not God. We are not in a perfect environment, but we are in an environment where we can have joy internally and we can have the success of love externally while we're here living in the reality that is called the world. God bless you. Have a great day in your part of the world, and make sure that in you, there is nothing of the world, but there's everything that Jesus is. God bless you. Have a great day.